Imagine a country with world's largest proven oil reserves, so rich in energy that its fate would instantaneously influence global markets. Now imagine that same country collapsing economically, politically and socially, and world's most powerful military directly intervening here. That's what happening with Venezuela in 2026. The United States carried out military strikes against Venezuela, a massive operation that led to the capture of President Nicolas Maduro and signaled intentions to run the country temporarily. A move that has shocked political analysts, diplomats, and governments across the globe. But to understand why this is happening, we need to go a little back to the rise and fall of one of the most influential nations of Latin America. This is the story of Venezuela, and let's understand this in this episode of the This Side. Venezuela was once a model of wealth in Latin America, predominantly due to its oil. For decades, heavy crude from Venezuelan fields fueled its development, leading to it becoming one of the most influential economies in the region. But a series of political choices and external pressures slowly unraveled that power. Starting with Hugo Chavez and later Nicolas Maduro, the government pursued aggressive nationalization of the oil sector, redirecting revenue to social programs. But falling oil prices, mixed with mismanagement, corruption, and lack of investment, led to sharp decline in production from over 3 million barrels a day to less than a million. At the same time, hyperinflation, shortages, and economic collapse led millions of Venezuelans into poverty and exile. By 2020s, Venezuela was no longer a rich oil state it once was. It had become a failed economy struggling to survive under political stress. Long before 2026, the United States had been applying pressure on Venezuela. Since 2014 and especially after 2019, the American sanctions targeted Venezuela's oil industries and key leaders for political change. The intent was to reduce or weaken Maduro's grip and support the opposition. But these sanctions also deepened economic pain and pushed Caracas towards allies like China and Russia. By 2025, the tensions had escalated further. The United States carried out military strikes on alleged drug trafficking facilities, part of what it called armed strikes against criminal networks tied with Venezuelan state. Venezuela accused Washington of using war on drugs as a pretext for regime change. What started as an economic pressure suddenly became a military pressure campaign. On January 3rd, 2026, the United States military launched what it called Operation Absolute Resolve, a large scale strike against Venezuela's military infrastructure and targets. In the early hours, more than 150 US aircrafts, including special forces and intelligence operatives, strike the northern part of Venezuela, including Caracas. Within hours, President Nicolas Maduro and his wife Celia Flores were captured and flown back to New York to face charges, including narco terrorism. This was the first time in decades that US carried out such direct military operations in Latin America after the 1989 Panama invasion. After the operation, President Donald Trump made extraordinary statements regarding Venezuela's future. He said that US would run the country until such a time as we can do a safe, proper and judicious transition. He also claimed that American companies would be rebuilding Venezuela's devastated oil infrastructure, calling Venezuela's oil invaluable and hinting that restoring production would be for mutual benefit. Trump also framed this as a mission to restore order, stability, prosperity, and making Venezuela rich again. But critics think otherwise. See, Venezuela's proven oil reserves, which are around 303 billion barrels, are one of the largest in the world. And restoring production would shift global oil dynamics immediately. So when Trump says about rebuilding and making Venezuela rich again, critics ask, is this about Venezuela's people or just who controls the oil? The international reaction was swift and thunderous. At the United Nations, officials warned that the capture of Maduro sets a very dangerous precedent, potentially violating international law and state sovereignty as US lacked UN authorization and Venezuelan consent. China calls this strike a blatant violation of international law and a threat to regional peace, especially as Beijing had been trying to deepening its relations with Venezuela in economic terms. Many Latin American governments, European nations, and international legal experts criticized this operation, while only a few voices, mostly within US political spectrum, supported it. After Maduro's capture, the situation on ground became unstable. The Venezuelan Supreme Court has appointed Vice President Delcy Rodriguez as interim president, pledging cooperation with United States under international law, but later expressing defiance and uncertainty on long-term power dynamics. The country's military, oil sector, and domestic politics are still in flux. And how much the US literally has control is still contested by multiple analysts. So, while Trump claims that the US will run the country, the situation on ground remains far more complex. This isn't just a Venezuelan crisis, it's a geopolitical earthquake. US intervention has broken long standing norms on foreign intervention, tested international law, shifted energy politics, alarmed China, Russia, and other regional powers, and redefined US Latin America relations. Whether this leads to long term stability, a new oil boom, or deeper conflict, the world is observing Venezuela transform from a failed or a collapsed state to a major geopolitical battleground. Because in 2026, power isn't just about elections or ideology, it's about who controls territory, resources, and the narrative of legitimacy. And Venezuela may be the first major test of a new era of global power politics. So that's it for today, guys. I hope you liked the video. If you enjoy watching our content, please do subscribe to the channel because we are going to break down geopolitics and economics in a way that makes sense for all of us. See you in the next video soon. Till then, stay happy, stay diplomatic. This is Dev this side signing off. Peace.